Good evening. Today is October 19, 2020, and this is the 22nd episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari, the Republican nominee for U.S. Congress in the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. My guest today is a good friend, John Catanzara, president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 7, a 25-year veteran Chicago police officer, and a lifelong 23rd Ward resident. John, it's good to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Sargis, thanks for the opportunity.
John, I wanted to bring you on the show to discuss a little bit about what's happening with our law enforcement community and where are we now? Kind of walk us back from when you took over the presidency of the Lodge Number 7, and what are some of the things, maturations that have developed to where we are today?
Well, let me first say I apologize for being so underdressed. You're looking dapper tonight, but I was notified that a friend of mine that I had golfed with last week was tested positive for COVID, so I needed to find a immediate testing site. So I had to kind of go southern Illinois, so I can get an appointment for tomorrow morning to get tested. So here I am in a hotel room waiting to be tested tomorrow morning. No symptoms, knock on wood, but that's kind of why I'm dressed the way I am. But I do have a CPD for Trump t-shirt, so it does stay on message as far as voting and stuff. But back to your question, when we took over Lodge 7 operations in May, we inherited a lodge that didn't get much accomplished for the last 3 years for its membership, sadly so. But more times than not, that's been the case of the FOP. There's been a lot of backroom deals and phone calls made through history that benefited few instead of the many. So our goal from day one was to put membership first, provide customer service, and give them a fair shake for the money they pay for their union dues, and give them a fight and a voice they've never had before. It happened to coincide right at the beginning of the pandemic, piggyback shortly thereafter with riots and looting. It's been a hell of a 7 months, I can tell you that.
John, I know that some folks do not know how an FOP works. Technically, you're not like a regular union. We call you guys a police union, but police can't strike. So FOP is a matter of individuals just getting together from the police, forming that fraternal order or brotherhood, and then having enough numbers that they could finally pressure and be able to get the lawmakers to do what is required to be able to take care of them. So if you could tell us a little bit about what is the actual balance that you have to play between being a police officer yourself and how you represent the FOP.
Well, the bright side about that, dynamic is that you're on a leave of absence while you're working at the FOP. So technically I'm still the police for the next 3 years, but I don't have to worry about discipline. I can say whatever I want. I can fight for our members any way I see fit without any repercussions or interference from the police department or the city on that level. We are a union. The only difference is, as you highlighted, that we cannot strike. However, we do everything else a union does. We obviously fight for benefits for our members. We provide legal protections to make sure that they're not unfairly being suspended or terminated, which are probably the two main functions of this union. And we're going to provide services in those areas like they've never seen before. I can tell you there's a very simple misconception about, especially in today's environment, that the unions protect bad apples as far as police are concerned. I've said it over and over again. The simple explanation is this. An officer gets accused of something wrong and it's investigated either by COPA or IED. Obviously, they conclude their investigation. They either sustain the complaint or it's not sustained. And if it's sustained, they render a decision. Now that's one basically bite at the apple that officer gets. If you get a sustained complaint, you're found guilty, you can then obviously grieve it. It goes to the arbitration process, and an arbitrator then decides whether that was a just finding and punishment or not. That's it. After that arbitration, you're done. You get 2 bites at the apple. So to sit here and say we ridiculously protect people over and over and over again that should be on this job, it's just not true. The average criminal, just for comparison. So I stop somebody on the street, they have some enormous amount of marijuana or other drugs or a gun, you try and charge them with a felony. So you arrest them, you present the case, obviously, to the state's attorney. The state's attorney can deny felony charges. So theoretically, that's one bite at the apple. They approve felony charges, you go for a probable cause hearing. The judge can then throw it out after hearing the facts of the case. That's two. You go to trial, you're found guilty, that's three. You have a file for an appeal, obviously that's a fourth hearing you get. And theoretically, you could appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court. That's 5 protections the average criminal has when our officers have 2. So who's protecting who?
Yeah, it's amazing. What is the relationship? How does that play into the relationship with the superintendent of the Chicago police? Is there something is it where you can do things that he cannot or she cannot? Or how does that dynamic work when it comes to negotiating, especially with the contract?
Well, the superintendent has really nothing to do with the contract. It'd be nice if they were a little more involved, pressuring the mayor to do the right thing. But historically, they stayed out of negotiations altogether, which I guess as long as they're not taking a side, that's fine. But, for all intents and purposes, the superintendent is a great guy. I mean, he's just a good human being. I have the utmost respect for who he is as a man. Unfortunately, I don't always agree with everything he does policy-wise, but everybody in the police department and most citizens know that the police department is ran by the mayor. Nothing the superintendent wants to do or does is not given the thumbs up by fifth floor of City Hall. That's just the reality of the life in Chicago.
And does that also work when it comes to officer disciplines, as you were talking through the process? Is there anywhere that he injects himself where it may counter what the FOP is doing and what the system tries to do?
Well, the superintendent is the ultimate authority when it comes to discipline for any member, no doubt. However, this mayor has historically, I should say unhistorically, put her thumb on the scale of many high-profile incidents, if you want to call them. I mean, that Hollywood production she put forth with the Bobby Rush office and the popcorn and coffee nonsense was just so ridiculously over the top. The constant calling for officers to be fired as the mayor, it's just unheard of. It's not the way it's supposed to be done. It's basically slanting the scale. How can those officers ever get a fair shake anywhere now, discipline-wise, going forward, when you have the mayor basically calling for them to be fired? So let's just say if the police department makes that recommendation for those officers to be fired, even though never in a million years would that ever stick. But now you're going to the police board, and who appoints the police board members? The mayor. So now their boss has basically been on record saying this officer should be fired, and you expect those 9 members to do something different? It's just not fair in any way, shape, or form.
Given your understanding of a system approach, if there's any changes you would make or any recommendation you would make, what would be one recommendation you would make at both local or in federal level that might be able to alleviate some of the pressures and these friction points that you have to deal with on a daily basis?
Well, I think we have to get back to allowing the police to be the police. These one-off incidents, it used to be local only would trigger these knee-jerk reactions. Now it's anywhere in the country, something happens, it automatically triggers a knee-jerk reaction here, which is just ludicrous. Freddie Gray did not happen in Chicago. Breonna Taylor, even though there was nothing wrong with the Breonna Taylor shooting, did not happen here in Chicago. The Atlanta shooting did not happen here. But again, that was the impetus for all of these ridiculous riots and excuses for people to break the law, to actually assault and batter our officers. And nothing seemed to be done about it. But, we have a very professional police force. The mindset is that Chicago police shoot unarmed black people all the time. Ridiculous. The numbers are minuscule, actually. And if we are allowed to do our job, this city would be very different. But that also means this election cycle, 15 days away, is huge when it comes to law enforcement. Because the state's attorney of Cook County has absolutely ran this city into the ground when it comes to living in a civilized society. I'll give you one quick example, and this is very recent. This was in the last 72 hours. I was contacted by an officer who stopped a vehicle. There was one person in the car. The registered owner of the vehicle was driving that car. He was a convicted felon. Not that the officer knew that originally, but nonetheless, he had articulate suspicion to pull the person over to get him out of the vehicle where they discovered a handgun underneath the seat. That person said, I have no idea how that handgun got there. That's not mine. Okay, they put him in custody. They brought him to the station. They called the state's attorney to approve charges. A convicted felon carrying a weapon is a minimum 10-year sentence. They told the state's attorney that the person said he didn't know how the gun got there. It's not his. They released him without charging. They said, he said it wasn't his gun. What do you want us to do? I mean, that's the kind of law and order that is currently going on in Cook County. So now you have a convicted felon back out on the street again who thinks he's above the law. And you wonder why we're on pace for 700 murders this year in Chicago. It's just ridiculous.
No, it's a sad case. You know, when the shooting took place in the funeral home area on the south side of Chicago, I got together with a number of our individuals that are running right now for office and put a joint statement together for them. They all signed it from both State House, State Senate, federal, both U.S. Congress, as far as the House of Representatives is concerned, and the Senate. And we went out there, made a statement about it, and unfortunately, in my statement, I have to say that we're close to the numbers are going to max the two combined wars, both in Afghanistan and Iraq, of direct engagements where where military personnel were killed. And unfortunately, Chicago's about to surpass that, possibly even before the end of the year. You know, a good thing is that at least we got individuals like Pat O'Brien that is now running against Kim Foxx. News today is that he's within 6 points of trying to take that particular seat, and I hope that he does. If anyone makes it through in the Chicago politics, he's going to have to be the one. Because we just cannot operate with Kim Foxx being at the helm. And I hope even the mayor of Chicago understands that, because if Kim Foxx is reelected, I think you're going to see the mayor of Chicago be a one-term mayor. And I hope that, at least she understands that she's not going to be somebody who's going to be supporting her in the long run politically. John, all in all, let me know if you think there's anything else that we need to look at when it comes to policing, especially with these particular cases that came up.
Well, again, if you notice, the riots in Chicago specifically have almost become non-existent. I mean, really, they realized they were hurting their overall, and it just goes to prove that their overall mission was to affect the election. And when they realized they were hurting Biden's chances of getting elected, they stopped. The funding stopped. Everything went to a different level of non-existence because they wanted to make sure Biden gets elected. Now, I don't know what happens November 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Nobody knows what to expect. But it's not reality to say that those riots and lawlessness that happen downtown are just an accepted behavior. But the politicians in this city have made them an accepted behavior. Even if it is a one-off and it's just because of an election, you have now emboldened, and even if most of them were not even from Chicago, you have now emboldened the Chicago criminals to think that that kind of behavior is okay because we're not going to do a damn thing about it. It's kind of despicable that the aldermen have been as quiet as they have been for the last 4 months. It just is inexcusable. So now what do they do? And I'm sure many of your viewers in the city specifically probably don't know this, but right now, in your district where you live, where you pay for taxes on your house, you can guarantee that half of the police district is downtown right now and not guarding your neighborhood. Every day, every watch, for the last 3 weeks now, they've been sending half the district personnel, if not more, downtown to stand around just in case. They're doing nothing. They're scarecrows, which means not only are your neighborhoods not getting protected like they should be and like they have been in the past, but our officers are being put in jeopardy of not having backup. What used to be able to be depending on less than 60 seconds, you'd have a backup car there. Now you're going to be fighting for a lot longer and hoping nothing goes bad for 2-3 minutes before a car gets there, if not longer. It's just inexcusable. And again, the aldermen have been silent. This is some kind of strategy that, I can't even wrap my head around how that makes sense to anybody, but I'm not making those decisions right now.
How are these decisions affecting retention? I mean, what are we looking at? Is there a projection you have for how many recruits are coming in, what the numbers are looking at when you're looking at 2021, 2022 projections and what the retention numbers are? I'm sure who's going to be in the pipeline probably leaving and whether or not those numbers are going to be matched with younger folks coming in. Are we going to have more of a younger police and where the veterans are going to just basically dissolve away during this process? What are some of the possible issues that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to leadership training, given how the numbers are going to fluctuate?
Well, so those numbers are actually quite scary. I'll tell you this, the superintendent just talked to a group of recruits that just started, 40 of them, 40. It used to be recruit classes were close to 100, if not more. At least they were when I got on 25 years ago. And even recently, when Mayor Rahm Emanuel basically decided to do the same thing the mayor is pledging to do right now and not fill vacancies. She has said there's about 800 vacancies in the police department that she's not going to fill. If you do the simple math, that's probably $70+ million in savings, if you want to put it that way, that she's not going to put officers back on the street. But when she took office, we had almost 1,100 fewer officer department than our previous high under Rahm Emanuel. He did the same thing. He decided he was going to stop filling vacancies in order to save money. She panicked because she realized that we were understaffed, and she had this mass hiring of officers over and over and over again, which was good because it was needed. It made this department get really young, really fast. I mean, we were campaigning in districts all December and January, where historically you'd have a district that it took 14, 15 years to get day shift. Literally, it would take 3 or 4 years to get day shift now. I mean, there was just so many kids that had 3, 4 years on the job, partnered up with other officers with 2 and 3 years on the job. It's obviously inspiring to see the youth movement. However, it's very dangerous that you have officers that young working together every night, learning the intricacies of this job. It's dangerous for them. It's dangerous for everybody they work with. But again, it goes back to the point of we're short officers. And to answer your question, I'll give you a perfect example. A good friend of mine, literally, just went to work about 3 weeks ago, went to roll call, left roll call. He decided, you know what, I'm done with this. Went downstairs, hit the send button, and retired right there on the spot. He did 28 years in Inglewood and decided that was enough. And he's not old enough to get the discounted health insurance. But again, it wasn't a deciding factor anymore. Veteran officers are retiring at record numbers earlier than ever before because they're just sick of this anti-police climate that this mayor has cultivated.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, if you think about it, now they're trying to push on this year's agenda of progressive tax. A progressive tax is going to be really hurting if it passes how the pensions are going to be dealt with. And pensions are going to start getting taxed. They're going to do the same thing they did in California. If you try to take your money and go live somewhere else, guess what? They're going to start taxing you for a 10-year, 10 years on whatever pension you were going to take. It's unfortunate because I just saw that the mayor is considering almost $94 million on property tax increases, and more than 300 city workers are going to be laid off. I'm not sure if that applies to anyone that is a support system for the FOP or not.
Well, from what I understand, that's above and beyond the 800 vacancies. She's not planning on filling from the police department side. That's additional layoffs. But I'm glad you brought up the fair tax because it's something not a lot of people pay attention to. And it's certainly not something that good old Governor Pritzker likes to harp on. But people need to remember, he's put a lot of his own money into that campaign to get this tax passed. And that should scare the hell out of every person in this state. The fact that they're counting on that $3.9 billion windfall, if that was to pass, and that's immediate, tells you something. That's their default plan for everything. More taxes, more revenue, not less spending. But the simple dynamic, and this is about as simple as I could put it for people listening, the fair tax simply does this. Right now, everybody pays the same rate across the board. Sure, they can raise the rate and make people pay more taxes, but that means everybody pays the taxes. The fair tax creates different levels, and it obviously has thresholds. the top threshold being $250,000, they say right now. And that would put you at the highest tax limit, and obviously the lower end on the other side. But it doesn't stop it from ever changing. Once you open that door, they can change those sliding scales. They can, obviously, the thresholds from 250. That doesn't generate enough revenue. Guess what? Then it's going to be 200,000. It doesn't generate enough revenue. It's going to be 150,000. Doesn't generate enough revenue. It's going to be the retirement income next. It opens the door, and Pandora's box will never be closed. If we've never learned a lesson in this state, the more you let them tax, the more they keep taxing. You have to cut them off and put them on a diet.
Well, I was on a recent interview just Sunday, and I said if you take an imaginary line that splits Indiana and Illinois, 15 step forward in Indiana, and you're in a surplus. And they had the same kind of a tax structure we do, with small tweaks here and there, but it's literally the same. And you take a 15-inch step backwards, and you're in this mess, and it's an absolute debacle. It shouldn't be where 15-inch step either way is going to put you in a positive or negative, but a lot of people are leaving. I know a lot of people have already put their homes on sale, fearing that the fair tax is going to pass, and those individuals are going to leave. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And as you said, when it comes down to it, the police are not being supported. We have individuals politicians that even the incumbent I'm running against constantly keeps on pushing the false narrative and all talking points about what happened in the incidents, where in the police shootings, which are just ridiculous. Talk about, the gentleman had his kids living in the car. He was going to the car to get his kids, and he was shot in the back. Where is that even a reality as far as what the reports that have been released indicate what happened in that particular incident? But there's an individual who might get reelected again for another, in this case, 24 years. These people are there, and they're constantly pouring fuel on the fire.
It's pretty disheartening sometimes, I can tell you that. So, Sargis, I will tell you this. Thank you for your service to this country, for one, and also thank you for stepping up and putting your name on the line. When you run for any office, you are going to be attacked. It's not something that is obviously tailored for everybody, so it takes a unique individual to put their name on the line to know they're going to be subjected to that, so I give you kudos for that. But Jane Schakowsky has done nothing. She's right up there with Dick Durbin, who have done nothing for this state but stoke flames of BS and pour gas on fires to obviously incite emotions to basically put one side against the other. It's just the oldest game in the book as far as the Democrats in this state are concerned. Shame on them. They have ran this, obviously, city into the ground, this county into the ground, and this state into the ground. And I'm not even here to say I'm necessarily a conservative Republican. I'm more independent than anything. But I do know I can call balls and strikes, and I do know the Democrats have ran this city and state and county into the ground. And it's time for a change. And, I really hope people consider voting almost straight ticket Republican if they can. Again, it's not always feasible, but we definitely need to do something different than we've been doing. These career politicians need to be taken out of office, and other people need to be given the opportunity to succeed or fail on their own ideas. Again, term limits are the best option for that. Nobody ever wants to put it forth. They put it forth as propaganda during an election, and then as soon as they get elected, it's put on the shelf and collecting dust.
No, look, I agree with you. I mean, you have to get in and you got to run, you got to fight. If you truly believe in, fixing the issues and the problems. I'm a Republican. If you look at some of the endorsement I received, conservative, I consider myself. I was recently called a blue dog Democrat by a interviewer, because that's how they saw me. I don't know what has happened to the Democratic Party where a conservative Republican becomes a blue dog Democrat, but so be it. I will take that. But again, I think if we need two parties to function in this country, but you need to, if you want to save the Democratic Party and you're a Democrat, you need to vote straight Republican, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. These socialists that are now taking over the Democratic Party are going to force those moderate Democrats to vote in line with them, period. And if you go look at what has happened over the past 3 years, 4 years now with President Trump, the Democratic Party has pretty much voted along the same line on the issues that are very important, especially when it comes to the policing piece. And, we have police now that are, recruiting is down. They're being targeted constantly. They're being questioned. They have to deal with the COVID issue. They got stresses on their own families. And now not only are you going to put them through this process, you're constantly going to make them the villain. And then after that, you're going to try to get their tax their pensions, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm hoping, like I said, we're in the fight. Thank you very much for the Fraternal Order Police endorsement. And thank you very much that you guys were out there this past Saturday helping us out, knocking on doors. And I know the FOP is going to be out there this Saturday with me, hitting my district again. We're going to try our best. That's all we could do, John. And
we're going to continue, obviously. We'll continue being out at the polling places too, the early polling places, as much as we can. Obviously, the FOP is trying to be more of a player than ever before on that level. But you were talking about the two-party system. I had a brainstorm on the way down here to Southern Illinois. We should create a third party. It should be called the eviction party, and get rid of incumbents. I mean, on both sides. I think it's a great sell.
I think it's a great sell too. Yes, eviction party. You might have, pretty much you're gonna neuter both parties. I don't know if you're gonna have anybody else left in it, but so be it. As they say,
fresh blood.
We need fresh blood, fresh perspective. John, one thing I have been pushing for, and regardless, and I know we've sat down and talked about it. Unions are great, in this case the FOPs, various different states, but I think we need to have a national political action committee, which I've been working on. I know we're going to get a chance to sit down and talk through the process. So it's not just this election, folks. We're looking past this election through the future elections. We got to get that national pact that is going to strengthen the FOP. So when somebody like a Kim Foxx shows up and literally tries to destroy the police departments, that we're going to be able to knock them out, because she has a lot of money in her coffers. Even with a good guy like Pat out there running, he struggles given the amount of money that he needs to be able to run against her. And Pat is a guy that I see his signs with both Biden signs and Trump signs. So he's a very moderate middle of the guy, and he should be right now winning on a landslide, not just 6 points behind in the process. And I think this is where the Political Action Committee, with those 800,000 officers across the nation, they can come in and absolutely just bury these type of politicians. And then they'll eventually figure it out that, the police need to be protected. Law enforcement is our priority. We got to restore, peaceful tranquility to our streets if we're going to have an opportunity to even have economic development and move forward in our country. With that said, I'm going to give you a last word. I'm going to come back and do a closeout. But what do you expect? What do you want to see as we're going forward, John? And any words of wisdom for our listeners?
Well, again, if you're in the city, I would just urge you to contact your alderman and make sure they do the right thing, and make sure the men and women of the Chicago Police Department get a fair contract. We have been without a contract for over 3 years now. Nobody seems to give a damn. We're fighting like hell to try and make that a reality, but it's going to take outside pressure for these aldermen to start getting on the mayor's behind to make that a reality. Again, vote. Please make sure you get involved in this process. You're not always going to have, the result you want, but you definitely need to have your voices heard and expressed. That's the only way, to me, you have a solid argument for complaining about the way things are. You don't vote, you're part of the problem, you're not part of the solution.
Well, early voting has begun. It has begun in all the 50 wards in Cook County. There's a location in the downtown location, which is a super site, and we have 52 stations now in all the townships and the various different districts within Cook County, so people can go in and vote. And look, if you want to do a mail-in, you can still do the mail-in. You could still request a mail-in ballot, and it's a matter of just walking in, dropping it in a box there, but the reality is, if you don't vote, it's useless. We can't get anything done, regardless of who endorses you. If you don't get the votes, we can't make the changes that we want to. So please, as far as I'm concerned, for me, you have to go to www.votesangari.com. Please donate. We still need money. The election is not over. We have a lot of bills we still got to pay to make sure we have the folks on the ground getting the message out. So every dollar can help. We want to be able to put more signage out there. So we need money, we need donation, we still need volunteers. So please come on and help the law and order candidates, and let's try to move this thing forward. And John, I wish you luck. I hope that everything comes up negative come tomorrow's testing. With that said, what is the final thing that you want to say to your police officers today before we sign off?
I couldn't be prouder of the men and women that we represent. The narrative is that we kill unarmed black people all the time. The police department, in the face of the worst riots this city has ever seen, has basically blown that narrative out of the water and proved that it was BS from the beginning. We have showed more restraint than I think we should even have to. But again, the men and women have been beyond professional. It's time to give them the contract they deserve.
It's time to give them the contract they deserve. And with that said, God bless, and this is New Paradigms.
Thank you, Sargis.
Thank you, John.
The founders of this nation did not create a land of opportunity by growing government. They did it by reducing its powers, particularly when the government of the King of England did not provide them with representation. The U in the United States originally was not capitalized, but the S in states was, meaning that the states were like semi-sovereign nations. Governance was more local and solutions were often more interpersonal rather than political. We have moved into an age where politicians act like agents of a larger special interest rather than representatives of the people, and as a result, liberty has been compromised. With your help, Lieutenant Colonel Sangari can fight this corruption and end this Middle Eastern non-democratic mentality of keeping an official in his or her seat for life, or replacing them by their own hand, pick subservient, and finally start focusing on collective American effort on actually representing the needs of all the constituents in the 9th Congressional District, including Democratic and Independent Americans, for our benefit, and not to advance the position of a single political party or person in our America again, advocating for honoring and empowering the American dream for all. Vote Sangari, honoring and empowering the American dream.
I am Sargis Sangari, and I approve this message.